My name is Hazel Harmon. I'm 68 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had a beautiful family, a son, Benjamin, who works as a financial advisor in Boston, a daughter, Cassandra, who runs her own interior design company in Chicago, both successful, both married, both with children of their own, and me, their mother, living alone in the same four-bedroom colonial in Connecticut where I raised them after their father decided his secretary was more interesting than his family. I'm sitting at my kitchen table now, looking at the old photos I've arranged in front of me. Family vacations, graduations, Christmas mornings. Memories that used to bring me joy, but now just remind me of the lies I told myself about who my children really are. The invitation to Greece came on a Tuesday. Benjamin called, his voice unusually bright, saying he had a business conference in Athens and thought it would be nice if I joined him for a week afterward. "We could explore the islands, Mom," he said. "You always wanted to see Santorini." It was true. I'd dreamed of visiting Greece since I was young, but there was never enough money or time. After Frank left, vacations meant driving the kids to my sister's place in Vermont, or, if we were splurging, a weekend at the Jersey Shore. "That sounds wonderful," I told him, ignoring the voice in my head, questioning why this sudden generosity. Benjamin and I had drifted apart over the years. Our conversations were mostly perfunctory, brief calls on holidays, updates about the grandchildren. "But I can't let you pay for everything. Don't worry about it," he insisted. "I've got points for the flights, and the hotel is covered. Think of it as a thank you for everything you've done." I should have known then. People don't suddenly become thoughtful without reason, but I wanted to believe my son was finally recognizing the sacrifices I'd made, that maybe he'd sensed something was wrong, because something was wrong. 3 weeks before his call, I'd sat in a neurologist's office and heard the word that would change everything: Alzheimer's. Early onset. The doctor had been kind but honest. "We caught it early, Mrs. Harmon. There are medications that can slow the progression. But you should start thinking about the future, about care options." I hadn't told my children yet. I didn't want them to worry, but more than that, I didn't want them to look at me differently. I'd always been the strong one, the pillar they could lean on. The idea of becoming a burden terrified me. But a trip to Greece with my son seemed like the perfect opportunity to break the news. Face to face, in a beautiful place, where we could talk about what came next as adults. I spent the next month preparing. I got my passport renewed, bought new clothes, and researched the places we might visit. I even started learning a few Greek phrases, though the new words slipped from my memory more quickly than they should have. Another small reminder of what was happening inside my brain. The flight to Athens was long but comfortable. Benjamin had used his points to upgrade us to business class, another unusual generosity that I chose not to question. He spent most of the flight working on his laptop or sleeping, but I didn't mind. We would have plenty of time to talk in the coming days. Our hotel was in the heart of Athens, with a view of the Acropolis from the rooftop terrace. The lobby was all marble and dark wood, with staff who smiled warmly as they took our bags. "I have meetings all day tomorrow," Benjamin said as we checked in. "But I thought we could have dinner on the rooftop tonight. The concierge says the view at sunset is incredible." "That sounds perfect," I said, noticing how he kept checking his phone, a habit that had only grown worse over the years. Our rooms were on the same floor, but at opposite ends of the hallway. Mine was beautiful, a large bed with crisp white linens, a balcony overlooking a small courtyard, and a bathroom with a deep tub I immediately decided to use before dinner. I unpacked carefully, hanging my clothes in the closet and arranging my toiletries in the bathroom. I placed my pill containers in the bedside drawer, the new ones for the Alzheimer's medication alongside the old ones for blood pressure and cholesterol. Then I ran a bath, adding the lavender bath oil I'd brought from home, and sank into the hot water, letting the jet lag and tension melt away. I must have dozed off because when I woke, the water was cold, and someone was knocking on my door. Wrapping myself in the hotel robe, I called out, "Just a minute." It was Benjamin, dressed in a suit I hadn't seen before. Expensive looking, with a tie that probably cost more than my entire outfit. "Mom, something's come up," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. A potential client wants to meet tonight. It's a big account, could be worth millions to the firm. Oh, I said, trying to hide my disappointment. Well, we can have dinner tomorrow instead. Right, tomorrow. He nodded, already turning to leave. I'll text you. And that was it. He walked away, and I stood in the doorway, watching his back until he disappeared into the elevator at the end of the hall. I got dressed anyway, choosing a blue dress I'd bought specially for the trip, and went up to the rooftop alone. The view was indeed incredible. The Acropolis lit up against the night sky, the city sprawling below. I ordered a glass of wine and a meal I barely tasted, watching as couples and groups around me laughed and talked. An older man at the next table noticed me sitting alone and raised his glass in a silent toast. I smiled back, grateful for the small acknowledgement. Back in my room, I took my pills and got into bed, telling myself not to worry. Business was business. Benjamin would make it up to me tomorrow. But tomorrow came, and my phone remained silent. No text, no call. I waited until noon, then sent a message. Hope your meetings are going well. Let me know about dinner. 3 hours later, he responded. Still in meetings, might run late, don't wait for me. I didn't. I went out alone, walking through the ancient streets of Athens, guidebook in hand. I visited the Acropolis, marveling at the Parthenon's enduring beauty despite centuries of damage and repair. Just like people, I thought. We get broken, but we stand. That night, I ate at a small taverna where the owner took pity on the American woman dining alone and brought me extra dishes to try on the house. I stayed out until my feet hurt from walking, returning to the hotel after dark to find my room exactly as I'd left it, the message light on my phone unblinking. On the third day, I decided it was time to talk. This wasn't how the trip was supposed to go. I knocked on Benjamin's door, but there was no answer. At the front desk, I asked if they could ring his room. I'm sorry, Mrs. Harmon, the receptionist said after trying. It seems your son is not answering. Would you like to leave a message? No, thank you, I said, embarrassment warming my cheeks. I'll try his cell. But Benjamin's phone went straight to voicemail. I left a message that sounded calmer than I felt. Benjamin, it's Mom. I haven't seen you since we arrived. Please call me back. I'm getting worried. I spent the day by the hotel pool, my guidebook open but unread on my lap. Every few minutes, I checked my phone. Nothing. By evening, worry had turned to anger. This wasn't about business anymore. No meetings lasted 3 days without a break. I called again and again reached voicemail. Benjamin, this is ridiculous, I said. I came all this way to spend time with you, and you've disappeared. At least have the decency to tell me what's going on. I had dinner sent to my room that night, unable to face another meal alone in public. As I picked at my food, I realized I had a decision to make. I could continue waiting for my son to remember I existed, or I could salvage what was left of this trip on my own. In the morning, I went down to the concierge desk and asked about day tours to nearby islands. The woman was helpful, suggesting a boat trip that would leave the next day. It's a 3-day cruise, she explained. You'll visit Mykonos, Santorini, and Crete. Very beautiful, especially now before the summer crowds. 3 days, I repeated, thinking of Benjamin returning to find me gone. Good. Let him worry for a change. I booked the cruise and left a note at the front desk for Benjamin, explaining where I'd gone and when I'd be back. If you still want to see me, I added, I'll be here. As I packed a small bag for the cruise, leaving most of my things in the hotel room, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Relief at taking control, at not waiting anymore. It wasn't until I was on the boat, watching Athens fade into the distance, that I allowed myself to acknowledge the truth. My son hadn't invited me on this trip to spend time with me. He had invited me because he wanted something. And whatever it was, it apparently wasn't important enough for him to even maintain the pretense of caring about me. What I didn't know then, what I couldn't have known, was that this was just the beginning. That when I returned to that hotel room in Athens, what awaited me would change everything between us forever. It would be the moment I stopped being just a mother and started becoming something else entirely. A woman with nothing left to lose. And the thing about a woman with nothing left to lose, she has nothing left to give either, not even forgiveness. The cruise was a blur of blue waters and white buildings. Under different circumstances, it would have been the trip of a lifetime. I took photos of everything: the narrow streets of Mykonos, the sunset in Santorini, the ancient ruins in Crete, not to share with my children as I once would have, but to prove to myself that I was still here, still capable, still alive. On the last night, as the boat made its way back to Athens, I stood at the railing watching the moon's reflection rippling across the dark water. An older couple stood nearby, their hands clasped as they leaned into each other. I turned away, unable to bear witness to that simple intimacy I would never again experience. Back in my cabin, I checked my phone for the first time in days, having deliberately left it turned off to avoid the disappointment of no messages. There were 5 missed calls and 3 texts, all from Benjamin. "Where are you?" The first text read, time-stamped the day after I left. "Mom, this isn't funny. Call me." The second, sent hours later. And finally, yesterday. "I'm heading back to Boston. Had an emergency at work. Left your return ticket at the hotel desk. Call me when you get this." I stared at the phone until the screen went dark, then turned it off again without responding. So this was how it would be. No explanation. No apology. Just an expectation that I would follow his instructions like an obedient child. The ship docked early the next morning. I gathered my few belongings and disembarked, taking a taxi back to the hotel. My room key still worked, though Benjamin had checked out. At the front desk, an envelope waited with my name on it. Inside was a business-class ticket to Boston, departing in 2 days, and a brief note. "Had to get back. We'll talk when you're home." "No. I'm sorry." "No. Are you okay?" Just the implicit command to follow him back like a faithful dog who'd been temporarily abandoned but was expected to show up wagging its tail at the first whistle. I went up to my room, which had been cleaned in my absence but still held most of my belongings. The familiar weight of my pill containers in the bedside drawer reminded me of what I had come to tell Benjamin, what now seemed like a lifetime ago. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I called my daughter. It was early morning in Chicago, but Cassandra always started her day at dawn. "Mom?" She sounded surprised. "Aren't you in Greece with Benjamin?" "I was," I said, hearing how flat my voice sounded. "Did you know about this trip, Cassie?" A pause. Too long. "He mentioned something," she said carefully. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said. "Everything is not okay. Your brother abandoned me the moment we checked into the hotel. I haven't seen him in almost a week. And now he's gone back to Boston without so much as an explanation." Another pause. "I'm sure he had his reasons, Mom. You know how important his work is to him." In that moment, something crystallized inside me. The same protective instinct Cassandra had always shown toward her brother, excusing his behavior while expecting perfection from everyone else. I had raised them both, but somewhere along the way, Benjamin had become the sun around which our family orbited, his needs and desires taking precedence over everything else. "I have Alzheimer's," I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. Not the way I had planned to tell them, not in this cold, empty hotel room thousands of miles from home, but I needed her to understand the magnitude of what had happened. "What?" Her voice rose. "What are you talking about?" "I was diagnosed last month. Early onset. That's why I agreed to this trip. I thought Benjamin wanted to spend time with me before—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "Oh my God," Cassandra whispered. "Why didn't you tell us?" "I was going to tell Benjamin here, face to face. That was the plan." "Mom, She stopped, and I heard muffled voices in the background. Her husband, probably, or one of my grandchildren. I don't know what to say. "There's nothing to say," I replied. "I just wanted you to know. We'll figure this out," she said, her voice taking on that brisk, problem-solving tone she used with difficult clients. "When you get back, we'll all sit down together. There are great treatment options now, and between Benjamin and me, we can make sure you have the best care." "That's not why I called," I said. "I don't need you to fix this for me." "Then why did you call?" A hint of impatience now, as if I were being unreasonable. Why had I called? To share my pain? To hear her voice? To find out if she knew what her brother had done? "I wanted to hear your voice," I said finally. The closest thing to truth I could manage. "I'm here, Mom," she said, but I could hear the distraction in her voice, the mental calculations already beginning. How much would this cost? How would it affect her life? Her schedule? "Listen, I've got to get the kids to school, but I'll call you tonight, okay? And I'll call Benjamin too. Find out what happened." "Don't bother," I said. "I'll be home in a few days. We can talk then." After hanging up, I sat motionless on the bed for a long time. The view from my window showed Athens going about its business. Cars moving through narrow streets, people walking with purpose, lives continuing in their own rhythms. All of it foreign to me, as foreign as the strangers my children had become. I spent the next 2 days as a ghost in Athens. I walked through ancient sites, stood before priceless artifacts, and felt nothing. The ticket Benjamin had left me burned in my purse like a brand of shame. Part of me wanted to throw it away, book my own flight, refuse his cold charity. But the practical part, the part that had stretched every dollar after Frank left, the part that had taught my children the value of money, couldn't justify the expense. So I used his ticket. I boarded the plane he had chosen and sat in the seat he had paid for. I ate the airline food and drank their mediocre wine and watched their forgettable movies. And with each passing mile over the Atlantic, something inside me hardened. By the time we landed in Boston, I had made a decision. I would not be a victim. I would not be the sweet, understanding mother who forgave everything because that's what mothers do. I would not let them reduce me to a problem to be managed, a burden to be shifted between them as my mind slowly betrayed me. Benjamin wasn't waiting at the airport, of course. I took a taxi to South Station and caught the train to Connecticut, watching the familiar New England landscape blur past the window. My house was exactly as I had left it, though the air inside was stale, and the plants on the windowsill had withered from neglect. I unpacked methodically, placing the unworn clothes I had brought for dinners with my son back in the closet. I set my pill containers on the bathroom counter and stared at my reflection in the mirror. I looked older than when I'd left, the lines around my eyes deeper, my mouth set in a grim line I didn't recognize. My phone rang as I was making a cup of tea. Benjamin's name flashed on the screen. "Mom, are you home?" He sounded concerned, as if he had any right to worry about me now. "Yes," I said. "I'm sorry about Greece," he said, the words rushing out. "Something came up and Save it," I interrupted. "I don't want to hear your excuses." "Mom, please, let me explain. It's important. More important than being there for your mother? More important than common decency? If you'd just listen." "No," I said, the word like a door closing. "I'm done listening. I've spent my entire life listening to excuses from the men in my life. Your father had excuses too, you know. Always something more important than his family." Silence on the line. Then, softer. "Mom, Cassie told me about the diagnosis. Why didn't you say something?" And there it was, the shift, turning his abandonment back on me, as if I were the one who had done something wrong by not immediately burdening him with my illness. "When would I have done that, Benjamin? Between you checking us in and disappearing? We need to talk about this," he insisted. "About what happens next. What happens next. As if my life, my future, were now a problem for him to solve." "Yes," I agreed, surprising him. "We do need to talk. All of us. Why don't you and Cassie come for dinner this weekend?" "Saturday?" "Saturday," he repeated, sounding relieved. "Yes, I can do Saturday. I'll call Cassie. We'll be there." "Good," I said, and hung up before he could say anything else. I placed the phone carefully on the counter and looked around my kitchen. The kitchen where I had cooked thousands of meals for my children, where I had bandaged scraped knees and helped with homework and listened to teenage heartbreaks, where I had built a life for us after their father left. And now, where I would begin to dismantle everything they thought they knew about me. The days leading up to Saturday passed with glacial slowness. I kept myself busy, not with preparations for my children's visit, but with preparations of a different kind. I made appointments with my lawyer and my financial advisor. I organized my medical documents. I made lists of assets and accounts. I called a realtor. Each night I took out the photo albums and studied the faces of my children through the years. Benjamin as a toddler, his face smeared with birthday cake. Cassandra on her first bicycle, pigtails flying. Both of them at high school graduations, college ceremonies, weddings. The images blurred together, a lifetime of moments I had treasured while they were happening, never suspecting how meaningless they would become. Had I raised them to be this way? Had I given too much, made it too easy for them to take? Or was this simply human nature? To use those who love you until they have nothing left to give, then discard them like empty containers. By Saturday morning, I had my answers prepared. My house was clean but not welcoming. No special touches to make them feel at home. No freshly baked cookies or favorite meals. Just a neutral space for a necessary conversation. Cassandra arrived first, precisely at 5 o'clock. Always punctual, my daughter. She hugged me at the door, holding on a beat too long. "Mom," she said, pulling back to study my face. "You look tired. Are you taking care of yourself?" Already the assessment, the subtle criticism wrapped in concern. I had seen it before, directed at friends, employees, her own children. Never at Benjamin. "I'm fine," I said, stepping back. "Come in." She followed me into the living room, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood floors. She had brought flowers, which I took without comment and placed on the coffee table without a vase. "I spoke with Benjamin," she said, settling onto the couch with the practiced ease of someone used to taking control of uncomfortable situations. "He feels terrible about Greece." "Does he?" I remained standing, unwilling to sink into the familiar pattern of conversation where Cassandra explained how everyone felt and what everyone should do. "He said he tried to explain, but you wouldn't listen." She smoothed her skirt, a nervous gesture I recognized from her childhood. "He had good reasons, Mom." "I'm sure he did." My tone was even, emotionless. She looked up, perhaps noticing for the first time that something was different. Before she could speak again, the doorbell rang. Benjamin stood on the porch, holding a bottle of wine and wearing an expression of practiced contrition. He had shaved for the occasion and wore the sweater I had given him last Christmas. A costume designed to remind me of the son I thought I had. "Mom?" he said, leaning in to kiss my cheek. I turned slightly, so his lips grazed my hair instead. A small rejection, but his slight flinch told me he felt it. We moved to the dining room, where I had set the table with the everyday dishes, not the good china I normally used for family gatherings. No candles, no flowers, no special touches. Just 3 place settings and water glasses. "Aren't we eating?" Cassandra asked, noticing the lack of food. "I didn't say I was making dinner," I replied. "I said we needed to talk." They exchanged a glance, the silent communication of siblings who know they're in trouble but aren't sure why. "Mom, about Greece," Benjamin began, placing the wine bottle on the table unopened. "I know I owe you an explanation." "You do," I agreed. "But that's not why I asked you here." "Is this about the diagnosis?" Cassandra interjected. "Because we've been talking and we think—" "No," I cut her off. "This isn't about my diagnosis, though that's part of it. This is about what happens next." I reached beside me and produced a folder, which I opened and placed between us on the table. Inside were printouts of bank statements, property deeds, investment accounts. "I've spent the last 35 years putting my children first," I said, my voice steady. "I paid for your educations, helped with down payments on your homes, loaned money for Cassie's business, invested in Benjamin's partnership buy-in." They stared at the papers, confusion evident. "Mom, why are you showing us this?" Benjamin asked. "Because you both seem to have forgotten," I said. "You've forgotten who built the foundation you stand on, who sacrificed so you could succeed." "That's not fair," Cassandra said, her voice rising. "We appreciate everything you've done." "Do you?" I looked at her directly. "Because appreciation usually comes with respect, Cassie. And respect doesn't look like what I experienced in Greece." "That was Benjamin, not me," she said quickly, throwing her brother under the bus with characteristic ease. "Was it?" I turned to include them both in my gaze. "Because when I called you from Athens, your first instinct wasn't concern. It was to defend him, to make excuses, just like you've always done." Benjamin shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, if you'd just let me explain what happened—" "I know what happened," I interrupted. You used me. You invited me on that trip for a reason, and it wasn't to spend time with your mother. His face paled slightly, confirmation that my suspicion was correct. What are you talking about? Cassandra asked, looking between us. I kept my eyes on Benjamin. Tell her. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in his throat. It's not how it sounds. Isn't it? I said. Because it sounds like you invited me to Greece because you needed my signature on something. Something to do with your father's old life insurance policy, perhaps? The one that still had me listed as beneficiary because he never bothered to change it after the divorce? Cassandra's head snapped toward her brother. Benjamin? What is she talking about? Benjamin's silence was damning. Your brother discovered that your father died 6 months ago, I explained, watching comprehension dawn on Cassandra's face. He never told us, of course. Why would he? He'd been out of our lives for 20 years. But he never changed his life insurance beneficiary. The company contacted Benjamin as the alternate contact when they couldn't reach me directly. It's not like that, Benjamin finally said, his voice strained. I was going to tell you, Mom, but then you mentioned this trip you'd always wanted to take, and I thought, why not do it now? Use some of that money to create a good memory before I lose my mind? I finished for him. How considerate. Benjamin, tell me you didn't, Cassandra said. Her face flushed with anger or embarrassment, I couldn't tell which. The policy was substantial, I continued. Nearly 7 figures. More than enough for a nice trip to Greece. More than enough to solve some financial problems Benjamin has been having. Problems he didn't tell you about either, did he, Cassie? Cassandra's eyes widened. What problems? Benjamin stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This isn't why I came here. I came to apologize, to make things right. No, I said, remaining seated, calm. You came because you still need my signature on those documents. You need me to sign away my claim to that money. It's your money, he said, but his eyes slid away from mine. I never said it wasn't. But you thought I might not need all of it, I pressed, given my diagnosis. Given that I'm alone in this big house with no real expenses. Given that you have a family to support and debts to pay. He didn't deny it. He couldn't. How did you find out? He asked instead. About Dad. I have friends in the insurance industry, I said. When I mentioned I hadn't heard from your father in years, one of them offered to run a search. Just to satisfy my curiosity. I paused. Imagine my surprise when I discovered he'd been dead for months. And my son knew all about it. Cassandra stood now too, pacing behind her chair. I can't believe this. I can't believe you would do this, Benjamin. Oh, stop it, I said coldly. You're just as complicit. Maybe you didn't know about the insurance policy, but you've enabled his behavior for years. Both of you have taken and taken, assuming there would always be more. That's not true, Cassandra protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? I picked up a second folder and opened it. Let's talk about the loan for your business, Cassie. The one you've been meaning to pay back for 5 years. Or the temporary help with your mortgage during the recession. Or the money for the twins' private school when Jason lost his job. Her face flushed deeper. You said those were gifts. No, I corrected. I said you could pay me back when you could. But you never intended to, did you? Because in your mind, that's what mothers do. They give and give until there's nothing left. I closed the folder and looked at them both. These strangers wearing my children's faces. Well, I'm done giving, I said quietly. I've made some decisions about my future, and I wanted you to hear them directly from me. They stared at me, momentarily stunned into silence by this version of their mother they had never seen before. A woman who kept receipts, who remembered promises, who had finally reached her limit. First, I said, I'm selling this house. What? Cassandra's voice cracked. But this is our home. No, I corrected. This is my home. You both have your own homes, bought with my help. Where will you go? Benjamin asked, sinking back into his chair. That's no longer your concern, I replied. But rest assured, I'll be well taken care of. I could see the calculations happening behind their eyes. The house, the inheritance, the plans they had already made for my money, my possessions, my life. Second, I've updated my will and medical directives. Neither of you will have power of attorney over my healthcare decisions or financial matters. Mom, you can't be serious, Benjamin said. You need someone to look after your interests as the disease progresses. I've appointed someone, I said. Someone who won't abandon me in a foreign country when I become inconvenient. The blow landed as intended. Benjamin flinched, and Cassandra's eyes filled with tears. But I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no remorse. Just a cold clarity about what needed to be done. Third, I continued, watching their faces carefully, I've set up a trust for my grandchildren's education. Money that will go directly to their schools, not through either of you. That got their attention. Nothing matters more to people like my children than the advantages they can give their own offspring. Advantages they take credit for providing, even when the money comes from elsewhere. The grandchildren will be fine, I said. They shouldn't suffer for their parents' choices. Mom, please, Cassandra said, tears now flowing freely. You're talking like we're terrible people, like we don't love you. Love. I let the word hang in the air. Tell me, Cassie, what does your version of love look like? Because from where I sit, it looks a lot like convenience. It looks like phone calls on holidays and visits when you need something. It looks like defending your brother when he abandons your mother in a foreign country after learning she has a degenerative brain disease. Benjamin winced. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Benjamin? I asked, my voice steady. Explain it to me. Explain why you thought it was acceptable to leave me alone for days without so much as a text message. He opened his mouth, closed it again. Then, with visible effort, he straightened his shoulders. I panicked, okay? When you told me about the Alzheimer's, I didn't know how to handle it. I needed time to process. Process what, exactly? I asked. The fact that your mother is human? That I'm not immortal? Or the fact that you might actually have to give something back after decades of taking? That's unfair, he said, a flash of anger in his eyes. I've been building my career, raising my family. I can't just drop everything because you… Because I what? I interrupted. Because I'm dying? Because my brain is being slowly eaten away? Tell me, what exactly is the inconvenience threshold that justifies abandoning your mother? Cassandra stood and moved toward me, hand outstretched. Mom, we're all upset. Let's take a breath and… Don't touch me, I said, my voice so cold that her hand froze in midair. Don't pretend you care now that you've realized there might be consequences. She withdrew her hand as if burned. What do you want from us? An apology? Fine, we're sorry. We should have been more attentive. We should have checked in more. But we have our own lives, our own problems. Yes, I agreed. You do. And from now on, you'll face those problems without my help. I withdrew a third folder from beside my chair and slid it across the table. Inside were documents showing the remaining balance of Cassandra's loan for her business and the money I had lent Benjamin for his partnership buy-in. I expect repayment of these outstanding loans, I said, in full within 90 days. Benjamin's face paled. That's nearly $200,000. You know I can't. You managed to find the money for a trip to Greece, I pointed out. And a new partnership at your firm. Surely a financial advisor of your caliber can figure something out. This is insane, Cassandra said, her voice rising. You can't seriously expect us to come up with this kind of money on short notice. Why not? I asked. I came up with it when you needed it. That was different, she insisted. You had savings, investments. Yes, I cut in. I had those things because I worked for them, because I sacrificed, because I didn't treat the people who loved me like ATMs. They exchanged another glance, that sibling telepathy I used to find endearing. Now it just looked like conspiracy. And what if we can't pay? Benjamin asked, his voice low, a challenge. I smiled for the first time that evening, though there was no warmth in it. Then the houses you live in, the ones with my name still on the deeds as cosigner, will be subject to lien. Shock spread across their faces. They had forgotten, or perhaps never fully understood, the extent of my involvement in their financial lives. How dependent they still were on the mother they had taken for granted. You wouldn't, Cassandra whispered. Wouldn't I? I looked at her steadily. You don't know me anymore, Cassie. Maybe you never did. Benjamin stood again, this time more slowly, calculating. Mom, let's be reasonable here. We made mistakes, yes, but this is extreme. Is it? I asked. Because abandoning your mother in a foreign country after her Alzheimer's diagnosis, that's not extreme? Using her for access to insurance money? That's not extreme? He had the decency to look ashamed, but I could see the wheels turning behind his eyes. Benjamin had always been the negotiator, the one who could talk his way out of trouble. I was going to tell you about the insurance, he said. I just wanted to make sure all the paperwork was in order first. I didn't want to get your hopes up. My hopes up, I repeated, the lie so transparent it wasn't worth addressing directly. Tell me, Benjamin, what exactly was the plan in Greece? Wait until I was having a good time, relaxed on some beautiful beach, and then casually mention that, oh, by the way, your father died months ago, and would I mind signing these papers? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. And you, I turned to Cassandra. You may not have known about the insurance, but you knew about this trip. You knew Benjamin was taking me to Greece. Did you even once ask why? Did you think your brother had suddenly developed an interest in spending quality time with the mother you both have been avoiding for years? Her silence was as damning as Benjamin's. That's what I thought, I said. I stood then, gathering my folders. I think we're done here. Done? Cassandra's voice cracked again. That's it? After everything, you're just cutting us off? No, I corrected her. I'm holding you accountable. There's a difference. Mom, Benjamin tried again, his voice soft, persuasive. We can work this out. We're family. Family, I said, testing the word like something that had lost its meaning. Family doesn't do what you did, Benjamin. People make mistakes, he insisted. We're not perfect, but we love you. We want to make this right. I looked at him, at the son I had raised, and felt a strange detachment, as if I were observing someone else's child, someone else's disappointment. You know what the worst part is? I said. It's not the abandonment. It's not even the lies. It's that you only came back when you realized you might lose something. Not because you were worried about me, but because you were worried about what would happen to your inheritance, your safety net. They didn't deny it. They couldn't. The good news, I continued, is that you don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to schedule obligatory holiday visits or make perfunctory birthday calls. I'm releasing you from the burden of having a mother. Don't say that, Cassandra whispered. Why not? It's what you want, isn't it? Freedom from obligation? From guilt? Consider it my final gift to you both. I moved toward the door, indicating that our meeting was over. What about Dad's insurance policy? Benjamin asked, unable to help himself even now. It's still legally yours. I turned back, unsurprised by his persistence. Yes, it is, and I've already claimed it. His eyes widened. What? I filed the claim last week, I said. The check arrived yesterday. But he seemed genuinely confused. How did you know how to— I told you, I have friends in the industry, I reminded him. Once I knew your father was dead, it wasn't difficult to contact the company directly. They were quite helpful when I explained the situation. What are you going to do with the money? Cassandra asked, her pragmatic nature asserting itself even in crisis. I smiled again. That same cold smile. That's no longer your concern. But I can assure you I won't be wasting it on people who see me only as a resource to be exploited. Benjamin stepped forward, desperation now evident in his face. Mom, please. I made a terrible mistake. I know that. But don't throw away our entire relationship over one bad decision. One? I raised an eyebrow. Your abandonment in Greece was just the final straw, Benjamin. The culmination of years of taking and never giving back. Years of assuming I would always be there with my checkbook open and my mouth shut. I opened the front door. It's time for you both to leave. They stood frozen for a moment, perhaps waiting for the reprieve that had always come before. The softening, the forgiveness, the maternal love that excused all sins. It didn't come. What happens now? Cassandra asked as they moved reluctantly toward the door. Now, I said, you live with the consequences of your choices, just like I've had to live with mine. As they stepped onto the porch, Benjamin turned back